Hello and welcome to the Stronghold Digital Mining Daily Update. Today is Tuesday, December 19th, 2023. Are you ready for a chemistry lesson? That's not a question I would have thought to ask you, but Stronghold Digital Mining earlier today, posted something on X, which I think is remarkable. I'm going to attempt to link directly to this post, but at the same time, I'll just tell you a little bit more about it in today's broadcast. So this is a pile of limestone before we added it into the power generation process to produce both electricity and beneficial use ash. And hopefully you see a picture of this limestone on the screen. Now, are you ready for that chemistry lesson that I alluded to at the very beginning of the broadcast? Air passes through our calcium-rich ash. CO2 in the air naturally bonds with the CaO in the ash, forming CaCO3. Are you following along? That's how we permanently store the carbon. I think this is phenomenally interesting. I do have to tip my hat, so to speak, to a very dear friend of this channel, Brian Hegg, who responded. And I think this is a very, thoughtful response. While making any post is helpful, your target audience wants to know how this affects the bottom line. Most only see a rock pile here. Listen, I confess, I tend to be very scientifically oriented. I tend to be very process oriented. I like the nuance and detail of how these mine waste to energy facilities operate. I'm very, very attracted to these very obscure details. I love this stuff. But I will also acknowledge, to Brian's point, we as a company, right, Stronghold Digital Mining is proposing to capture carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. CO2. That is a phenomenal endeavor, okay? What I recognize many of us, right, are keenly interested is in a slightly different type of scientific experiment, right? One in which our company can capture profits, right? Can capture positive EBITDA. So to that end, I think it's important that we talk a little bit more about that very topic, right? How is it that we're going to translate all of this phenomenal scientific work, which is mission critical, right, to not only the environmental mission of the business, which has existed really since its inception, which is to clean up these toxic mine waste piles, but now, right, to capture CO2 from the atmosphere. Look at the science that's being talked about is mission critical for that. To the extent that the preliminary projections and estimates that have been provided by Stronghold Digital Mining to all of us, right? Most recently in the December 12th, 2023 Investor/Analyst Day, in that presentation, we heard quite a bit about how this business can translate all of this phenomenal, very interesting science into cold, hard cash. Because at the end of the day, as intriguing of a scientific experiment as this can be, the overwhelming majority of co-owners and of shareholders want to see like money, okay? And the preferred metric is adjusted EBITDA because it really helps clarify and simplify what we're looking at. I understand that for many, it's really more of a net profit question, but there's so much depreciation, right? And these are all like non-cash accounting related things that happen, right? Not just at our business, but at a lot of businesses, that when you sort of stray away from just Stronghold Digital Mining and look at what other companies are doing, a lot of them talk about adjusted EBITDA as well. This is not a term or a way of looking at things that's unique to Stronghold Digital Mining. I can tell you that because I was most recently, just for fun, taking a quick cursory look at an investor presentation put out by a very, very well-known, if I mention the name, you'd probably know it, a very well-known international gold mining company. And you might say, why are you looking at a gold mining company? I just think it's sometimes interesting to broaden one's horizons just a little bit, right, to get a better sense of what's going on in adjacent industries, to then be able to, have a more informed perspective as to what's going on in the industry I care most about, right, which is the Bitcoin mining industry. And, there again, that company, which, is like a $40+ billion enterprise, right, with tentacles all over planet Earth, they focus on adjusted EBITDA as well. So again, I'm pointing that out because I think it's important that we kind of just line up behind that metric. Hey, it's adjusted EBITDA, so be it. So that's the metric we're going to be using. So far in 2023, Stronghold Digital Mining has not had any positive adjusted EBITDA. By the same token, Stronghold Digital Mining really hasn't had any blowout, disastrous quarters where we've lost a bunch of money. From my perspective, we've largely treaded water. Bearing in mind that we didn't really have a lot of Bitcoin mining machines at the beginning of the year, only now towards the very end of the year have we been really at full capacity in terms of both the Scrubgrass and Panther Creek data centers being fully built out with Bitcoin mining machines in them. Grid prices have not been very cooperative. Again, that's another mission critical revenue input that we just don't have control over. But again, now during the fourth quarter, we have seen both a combination of, from my perspective, grid prices spiking during portions of the time during the day, which could result in energy being directed to the grid when appropriate. But perhaps most important of all, and I'm going to pull this up right now, I'm going to the Zyner.com, homemade shareholder dashboard. Generally speaking, we've seen very good hash prices. As I pull this up right now, at about 4:12 p.m. Eastern Time, I do see hash prices at about 6.2 cents. Not exactly horrific, but not as optimal as I've recently seen. The culprit is not the price of Bitcoin having crashed to $30,000 a coin or anything like that. The price of Bitcoin is still at 42,000 and change. What has changed, at least as of this snapshot, is the network hash rate, right? The Bitcoin network hash rate. It's at 622. This, from my perspective, highlights yet again the incredible importance of this carbon capture project. I am a big believer in Bitcoin, okay? I think I have become more sober-minded about Bitcoin mining economics. That's not to say that I'm somehow negative on Bitcoin mining economics. What I think I am, however, is a bit more sensitized to just how dynamic of a market it can be. You as a company can be doing everything you can, right, to have a maximum amount of Bitcoin mining hash rate. But if the network hash rate as a whole really just explodes, right, and you see a network hash rate that's 622, 722, 800, 900, 1,000, right, it creates an overall Bitcoin mining economic ecosystem that's really, really challenging. And to make matters even more challenging from the, specifically from the perspective of being a Bitcoin mining company, is that once we have the halving, right, the Bitcoin halving in roughly April of 2024, well, then the, essentially you're going to have the block rewards cut in half. Essentially, you could kind of sort of think of it as the hash price getting cut in half as well. So absent the price of Bitcoin really surging, forward quite a bit, or alternatively, the network hash rate really shrinking dramatically, it's going to mean that Bitcoin mining economics are kind of in the toilet, right? For lack of a more artful way of describing it. So to have a completely differentiated additional complementary line of revenue, which will come from carbon capture, I think is critical, absolutely critical to the success of this venture, of this enterprise that we know as Stronghold Digital Mining. Power does not get cut in half, right? Like grid prices don't get cut in half as a result of a halving. Carbon capture credit economics, that is not subject to the rules and algorithms of Bitcoin, right? There's no halving event, so to speak, that affects carbon capture. So to the extent that Stronghold Digital Mining can have its data centers fully optimized, thanks to our friends at Frontier Mining, so that if and when hash prices are where they need to be for us to make money mining Bitcoin, that we can actually be doing that and generating profitable revenue doing so. Not, the data center's down again. What are we going to do? Let's go back to square one. We need to start tweaking machines and infrastructure. We don't want to be doing that. At this juncture, Stronghold Digital Mining, of course, right, needs to be fully operational in the sense that, hey, hash prices are green light, go, let's start hashing. Okay, let's do it. No equivocation, no delays, no downtime, no questions. We're ready, locked and loaded, ready to go. Similarly, to the extent that we see grid prices really ramping up, heaven forbid there's another terrible storm like Winter Storm Elliott last year, hey, we want both Scrubgrass and Panther Creek to be 1,000% ready to generate electricity and sell that electricity to the grid, not merely to generate profitable revenue for Stronghold Digital Mining, but to make sure I continue to get electricity. I live in PJM PP&L. I live in a zone of the grid that's serviced by Panther Creek. Okay, this isn't entirely about, hey, the company making money. Yes, they will, but they make money because they provide a mission-critical service, which is called electricity. I don't know about you, but I want electricity. I don't want to have to experiment with life absent there being electricity, simply because all of our wind and solar infrastructure is unavailable, right? Because it's nighttime and we don't have grid-scale batteries in place yet, or because a nat gas plant has had to go offline due to excessively cold temperatures. I think having some diversity as part of one's local grid is kind of important. Now, with regard to carbon capture credits, that's yet another source of revenue that's really critical, right? So to the extent we can continue to build out these carboliths, I think there's a second one that is being built as I speak. That's going to be really useful. It's important to be able to iterate and to experiment with the design of these carboliths. And I do support the decision by Stronghold Digital Mining to be cautious, right? And to really try to get the engineering right first, kind of like measure twice, measure three times, and then cut once, right? That old adage. I don't know if it's unique to, sort of like the carpenter world, or if there are other, I know for sure people who are electricians. One guy told me once, he's like, yeah, we don't, our pencils don't have erasers. And it took me like a split second to know, like, what the hell was he talking about? And then I was like, oh yeah, I get it now. There's no room for error sometimes, right? When you're doing electrical work, you make a mistake, you could be dead. So with regard to the carboliths, yeah, hey, we're going to really make sure that we know what we're doing. How many of these do we need? Then great, let's go into the market. Let's get the supplies we need. Let's build these things as quickly as possible, right? So from my perspective, the company is doing a lot of things that are absolutely essential to get us ready for 2024. And I'm really grateful to see that. Stock price, it looks like it closed at about, $5.80 a share, almost 1.2 million shares traded. At one point today, I do know the stock was up to like, $6 and maybe 43 cents, give or take a little bit. The stock price is going to do what it's going to do. I will wear myself ragged, if I obsess too much on the stock price, which is why I oftentimes do not, but rather focus my attention on our core operations and what's going on behind the scenes, because ultimately, if we take care of operations, right? If we make sure that we have all these assets, this basket of assets that we've spent so much time, effort, energy, and money, right, to get into place. If we, can ensure that this basket of assets is operational, right, and that our operations are maximized, then I am convinced operations will ultimately take care of us as shareholders. Okay. With all of that said, let's stay positive, let's be great, and we'll see each other again tomorrow. By the way, I want to just add one last thing. I do read all of the comments. Sometimes it's hard for me to respond in a timely manner, especially this time of year. But some very, very insightful comments to yesterday's broadcast. I'll be definitely diving into the comments to add my 2 cents, but I just wanted to acknowledge, even if you don't see any immediate response, I do read all the comments, and I'm very active on X/Twitter, whatever name it wants to go by these days. I may not respond right away, but I definitely read everything, and I eventually do try to make an effort to kind of squeeze it into to respond intelligently. I don't want to just kind of show up with like a thumbs up. I oftentimes do like chiming in a bit more substantively. Okay, we'll see each other again tomorrow.